This is Greg Marra with GoDpsMusic Live. This is a new show called From One Player to Another Podcast. This is episode 1, and for episode 1, I've got a fantastic guest, maybe the best guitar player on the planet. Everyone, please welcome Michael Angelo Batio.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, man. Thanks for doing this. New record's called More Machine Than Man, and I'm on my 5th listen through. The thing that's interesting about this record is I'm kind of bummed when the last song finishes. It draws you in, and it's one of those records that it's hard to stop playing. You got to listen to the whole, I think it's 50 minutes of material. So talk about your new record.
Hi, Greg. Thanks. I wanted to do a couple things on this new album. It's, this will be, depending on how people count it, I count it as my 15th solo album. Some people say 13th because I did a couple records in between with other artists. But I really wanted to make it heavy. I've never really done a heavy metal record. Usually it's instrumental, very proggy, a lot of keyboards. But I wanted to do a couple things. I wanted to focus on rhythm guitar. I wanted to focus on making it really intense. And I wanted to keep the production minimal so that you hear the rhythm guitars really well. You hear the drums, you hear the bass when the lead comes in. And there's a lot of space on this record where there is no lead guitar. The rhythm guitar is the lead. And so that's what I wanted to do. And, I watch a lot of people play thrash riffs and like, it's very much in the same position. Not saying that's not bad, but if you actually try to play like, it's really out there. And I really tried to stretch it to the limit as far as is how I could write this kind of album. But I'm glad you like it, but I think hopefully I did it. But, people seem to like it. And I did one thing, too, with 13 songs. That could have been a long, long record. I think in this age, I tried to keep most of the songs under 4 minutes. And the 2 longest ones are the ones with Chris Adler on drums that Josh Wilbur, the Grammy Award-winning producer, produced. He arranged them, and he had the 2 longest songs on the record, which I thought he just liked the parts. I wrote all the parts and he assembled them in the order that they were in on the album.
Well, I noticed the arrangements were lush and dense, and you made a comment about there not being solos over every single section. One of the things with mixing a record is you're always bummed out when you come up with a really great rhythm part, but then it's buried by a lead. And I want to make the comment that I just love that because I love listening to your grooves. And I love listening to what you're playing locked in with the band. So I guess that's one of my next questions is, how does that come together in your writing process? Do you write the riff first? Do you write the groove first? How does that work for you?
When I was in school, I studied writer's block. For example, like Haydn, the great composer, the contemporary of Mozart, he was much older than Mozart. He had to pray. He had to actually ask for divine guidance and divine inspiration. And so I learned a lot about, now a person like Mozart had no writer's block at all. So what I learned was to be able to create in a million different ways. I mean, I've written songs when I was in the band Nitro. Our singer actually recorded a melody onto an answering machine. Then I didn't have anything to record on, and then he played it to me, and I recorded it on my answering machine and wrote the music. So, but I had one goal in mind, to make the record ferocious and to make it really, really heavy duty and just trying to stretch it. I tried not to go in directions people expected of the music. And there's a lot of key changes. Sometimes there's mixed meter changes, a lot of them. But other times it's in 4, but it just sounds out there. But the writing process for me is any way I want to write. Sometimes I'll have a riff. Sometimes I had a beat. There's a song called The Badlands. I was sitting in my car at a stoplight, and I'm like, and I was like, yeah. And so I just put on my phone. board for an average album, about 100 ideas on my phone. And I take the good parts and then try and assemble them.
Do you program the drums, or do you work with a drummer when you're writing? How's that work for you?
I usually program. I've been programming drums for a long time. Even in the old Nitro days in LA, we used to use analog machines, but they had really good drum machines in the LA studio. So I learned how to program, and we would do all our demos using a drum loops, not loops. You had to program a kick, snare, and then we would get, our drummer to come in and play. I do a similar thing now, but with Adler, see, what I do is I give my ideas of parts. I mean, I'm actually okay drummer. And so I have an idea, and I've been doing it for so long. I just got really good at it. And then Adler will say, okay, that's great. And then he'll do whatever he wants anyway. So, I mean, it's Chris Adler. What are you going to say? But his idea, I do a version of, I call it Charlie Comes to Chicago, but it's really The Devil Went Down to Georgia. I completely rearranged it, but that was Chris Adler's idea. He's like, man, we should do a cover of that. So, and I actually had a really long version, and I trimmed it down because I just thought, how many times can you hear? And so again, I just, I'm good at editing myself, and it's taken me a long time to say, okay, let's put this on the chopping block. I think that's a big thing about maturing as an artist, to take away something. It's easy to keep adding for the 20-minute epic, so that's what I did.
I have a specific question that I've heard on most of your records. I love your tribute records. I go back to 1987 or 8 with Freight Train. I mean, we watched Headbangers Ball every week, and it was just the coolest. I have a question in regards to, you have passages in your music where there'll be the rhythm groove, but then the lead will come in, and it sounds like, and maybe correct me if I'm not hearing this, but I feel like I am hearing something there, where there's like a swell into the note, like a really fast swell. Do you know what I'm talking about? And if so, what is that?
I do that a lot. It's my introduction to the notes, like ding. Yeah, I do that all the time. It's kind of a signature thing. I like to like lead up to something, and because even on the Freight Train, so like 1 and 2 and 3, and it comes in on, I'm playing, 16, so down, 1, 2, and 3, and like I'll come in on a flourish of 16th notes or 8th notes, but it's usually 16ths coming in.
So when we get into the recording process, the engineering, that whole scenario, did you use an outside studio? Did you use an outside producer? You had mentioned someone. But how did that process go in regards to recording, engineering, mixing, mastering?
Well, I have been doing this a long time. And, I was talking to Joe, one of the owners, and we were talking about thinking outside the box. And I was saying, you can't think outside the box unless you know what's in the box. And so being with Atlantic Records and Warner Brothers Records in 2 different bands. So I was on 2 different major labels. I mean, 1 major label, 2 different bands. So I had 2 different major label record deals. I worked with some of the biggest producers of that era, Tom Werman, who did Poison and Motley Crue and Dokken and Ted Nugent. And so I learned a lot about recording. When we got to the Nitro phase, I was actually a good enough engineer where they would set up the mic pre's and everything, and I'd go in and track. And I'd actually be the guy pushing the knobs. And so, we worked on analog machines. You couldn't cheat. You press record. If there's no break, you better play. You can't just punch in on that. And so I learned old school. But, the engineering process now, I realize I'm not good at mixing my own records. Mixing's an art form and in itself, like editing a movie. A director doesn't edit the movie. They make suggestions. So right now, I took courses in engineering. I've had my own studio like a lot of people for a long time. And it's really nice. It's big. It's like an apartment. I'm in it right now. There's 4 rooms. And so I track guitars. I can track bass. I can track keys, but I can't track drums, and I don't mix, and I don't master. And here's another thing. I never really liked the mastering process as much. I always wondered why you spend all this time getting what I call as a mixed perspective, and then the guy in mastering changes it. I'm like, what? And so what I started doing many years ago, the first tribute record, Hands Without Shadows, I told the engineer, Chris, I said, Chris, I don't want to do this anymore. I want it mixed and mastered at the same time. I want the finished mixes to be the finished mixes. And now there are other people who might argue with me that you might need a different set of ears. That's great for them, but I'm really happy hearing the finished product when that mix is done. It's loud enough, it's got enough compression, limiting. That's how I do it. But I know my limitations, and that's the thing that's helped me. I do what I'm good at when I'm engineering. I know how to engineer my guitars, bass, keyboards, no drums. And if I need acoustic guitars, this isn't the studio to go. So I'll go in another studio and record acoustics that have better rooms and better microphones. So that's how I do it.
I love it. I love the fact that it translates really well to many systems. Earbuds, in the car, home studio. Then we had another studio that we monitors that we listen to. That's what makes it easy to listen to it over and over. It's not sort of mind-numbingly loud or anything like that. You can hear the dynamics in there.
Yeah, thank you. I've never been in a race to have the loudest record ever. I mean, because I don't really care about that. And if you listen to very early, like for example, the Nitro albums, when they were mastered to CD, they're very soft compared to today. But we had Bernie Grundman master the first one, and then we had Bob Ludwig master the second. So, I have a lot of experience working with people like that, but it also gave me the ability to figure out what the heck I wanted. But for example, with this new album, the rhythms are really dry. And so it was hard. We had this debate when we were mixing album, because I can't hear for myself how much high end or how much low end there should be on an album. That's why I defer. I haven't mixed my own albums forever. It's too much stress. I'll be like 1/100th of a dB at 3K. I'll do 80 mixes and there's like 1/10 of a dB between them. And I can hear it at the time, sure.
Yeah.
But now my concern is I wanted this to be metal. Yeah. And I wanted, like Chris Adler has a very signature drum sound. His snare almost sounds like kind of half snare and half tom. It's not very snary. And so when we originally were mixing, the engineer that I work with, his name is Chris as well. He mixed, he really compressed, and he did a lot of stuff to Adler's kit. And I said, dude, you can't do that. I said, you've got to let it be natural. So the kit is natural, the rhythms are in your face, and then I like to lay on solo. So hopefully it translates, but because it sounds good in different, like earbuds and all that, that's like a good engineer. I'm not that. He's a good mixer. I can't do that.
Yeah. Well, you got to be able to send the tracks correctly so they don't have to do so much correction in post-production or their mix or their mastering. You don't want to always have to correct a track. You want to give the engineer the good tracks to begin with. So your source audio is likely fantastic.
Thanks. You hit a really good point. One of the things that I work with this guy, his name is Chris Wisco. He's mixed a lot of albums, but he's from Chicago. He worked with early Disturbed, the band Soil. He was in a death metal band called Jungle Rat. And so he's got a lot of experience. And very early on when we started working together, I sent him some tracks and he goes, man, I had to fix this one part. And it sounded good to me on my system, but when I put it up on his. And so after that, I learned a valuable lesson because when I mix myself, I hear it a little different, but when you give it to somebody who's a pro, they hear things that I don't hear at all. And so here's what Chris told me. He said, Mike, when I get tracks from you, he goes, I just put it up and it already sounds like a record. And that's the key. I mean, you're a killer guitar player. If it doesn't sound right, going to a mixing engineer, they're going to find, especially when you start compressing and limiting and bringing in weird artifacts, all of a sudden things you never heard. Bro, I didn't do that. Yes, you did. And so, but it's being professional and giving the mixing engineer something he can or she can really work with.
Absolutely. Well, it translates great. And like I said, I'm on my fifth listen. So that, to me, that means something for sure.
Cool.
I want to get on to your signature guitars, but I've got one more question in regards to production. Someone corrected me that there are not it's not an actual keyboard player on this record. It's you. So I'm hearing these fantastic keys that sit just perfectly in the mix. Can you talk about those keyboard sounds that are on your record?
I play keyboards.
Okay.
So it is me playing.
Yeah.
But like on all my records, I always play a lot of keyboards. I kind of like, it's the kind of 80s wash, you know what I mean? So you're like, you know, and then over the top, you know, E minor, D, you know, so, but I do play keys, and I played before I play guitar. So, and I'm really good. I don't practice as much, you know, I'm not, but it is my second instrument. So what I do is I come up with, what I like to do is counter lines over the top. Like there's a song called The Two Sirens. I'm like, down, 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 down. And I like, down, down. So I'll come up with simple parts over the top. Not always simple. On my song Intermezzo, on one of my solo albums called Intermezzo, there's a lot of keyboards. And I have places in there where there's actually like solo keyboard parts. So, but I do it, and I have a lot of sounds. Like I have hardware synth modules where I have one that's just like old school sounds like Mellotrons, and I can get Strawberry Fields Forever and
nice.
Old Keith Emerson. And then I come from kind of the George Lucas school of this, like Star Wars. Like one of the things that people loved about Star Wars, he used a symphony orchestra. So a lot of the times the sounds that I use are not really a typical keyboard player sound. They're more strings, horns. I use symphonic sounds more. That's what I like better, you know. And I like strings sounds rather than like a real synthed out 80s sound. You know, like Van Halen had Jump. That sound, I really love that sound, but that's not a sound I normally use on a record.
I like the sounds that you're picking. It's just cool. Yeah, it's very cool. Well, let's jump on. We're going to do about probably another 15, 20 minutes, but I really want to get onto your Sawtooth Americana Modern M24 guitars. Did a little bit of research online, watched some of the videos. I mean, we have, at NAMM, you had the double neck telly, which is amazing. But you have these new signature guitars that have quite the appointments for a really great price. Can you talk about the different levels of your signature guitar?
Well, what we tried to do, you know, with this COVID thing, it kind of put everything on hold for a while. But, you know, one of the things that I love about Sawtooth is that, you know, and I've said this several times, it's easy to make a $10,000 guitar. You just hire a really killer luthier, pay him like $9,500. You know, maybe you have a $9,500 guitar. But if I have 10 grand and I want to get a really killer guitar, I'm going to find somebody really good that'll make me a beautiful guitar. So that's not so hard to do. But what's hard to do is to find guitars like Sawtooth does with a price point that has features that are just another company can't compete. And one of the things that I love about the company is that, you know, it's a lot of people, a lot of companies want to, and again, it's another thing that I think of it as like a pizza or a pie. They want us, the pie's only so big. If you've got a slice this big, another company wants to come in and steal part of that slice. So they want your slice smaller. That's a great idea. I mean, that's competition. But I think with Sawtooth, they have guitars that are in the $200 price range that are really great instruments. And so it brings in not only, you know, hopefully, we take some market share from other people, but the idea is too to bring more people in that might not be playing guitar. And they're sure not going to buy a $9,000 or $10,000 guitar to start with. So they can get these entry-level guitars that are amazing. And my M24, the white one, it's like a matted white. It's really cool looking. And we have a top-of-the-line German Floyd Rose that comes stock on the guitar. Now then, and it's in the $400 price range. It plays great. And so, you know, and we called it the M24. It's kind of like it's not so pointy. It's stratty, but it's not like point strat.
Is that the one right over your right shoulder?
Yes.
Yes, so they're right behind you, the guitars we're talking about.
Yeah, I have them strategically placed. But I love it because you can get an upgrade for in the $600 price range with Duncan pickups, the best of everything. And that, I'm used to releasing signature guitars of this quality that are double the price because I think Sawtooth has a huge advantage. One, look at, we're all musicians, but but really good musicians. And the other thing is they come from a manufacturing base that's really unheard of. I've never learned so much about manufacturing in my life until I was with Sawtooth, and I've been designing guitars for a while. So it's not like I don't know this, but I don't know a lot of the details that go in to the price points to make these so good. And then we have the other one that's over here. Again, it's the M24. It's a matted black, a flat black color, not shiny. It looks bad with the white pickups. And I love those, the black, I like simple inlays.
I do too.
To me, it's like a road map. I don't have to look at the road all the time. When I look at it, I want to see the lines of the road.
Yeah.
And that is in the $250 price range.
It's amazing.
It can't be beat.
You play that quite a bit as well.
Yeah. And I also play another one called an ES.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know. There's something magical about that guitar. We were talking about it. I love playing it, and I've A-B'd it again. I've got a lot of guitars in my collection, over 165. I've A-B'd it against some vintage Strats, and it holds its own. And in fact, I'm going to take it on tour. It's the price point and the value. You can't beat them. And then we have a lot of new signature models in the works. I play a lot of 7-string on my new album. And so when we did the record, I was right in the middle of transitioning from the old company to Sawtooth. Mm-hmm. So the rhythms are one of my other signature guitars, but I had it heavily modified, and almost all the leads are on Sawtooth guitars. So it worked out good.
Wow. Well, we could talk about that forever. I just love the fact that, normally when you buy any guitar, you could buy a guitar in the $2,000 range. You're going to change out the output jack. You're likely going to change out the pickups to what you want. Always the switch. Always change out the switch. The volume pot. You've got all that on these guitars. 500K pots, switchcraft parts. I mean, that's everything you would do anyway.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. A lot of people like to do their own modifications. It's a hobby with a lot of people. So they can get bodies like Sycamore. It's so light. I never even knew they could make a guitar out of Sycamore. I'd never heard about it before. Yeah. And so, but again, it's thinking outside the box. But a lot of people will buy this and trick it out themselves, because it's a hobby. But you have a great guitar to start with that's reasonably priced. Go for it.
Absolutely. So you've got some things coming up. You've got a live clinic this Thursday, and you're going to have segments with 3 acoustics. You're going to have a ukulele section, which I saw your last one. That was really amazing. I had to watch that a couple times to even figure out what you were doing. And you'll have 4 electrics. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I want to focus more on acoustic guitars. Sawtooth has a great line of acoustics. I mean, they sound really good. It's a very simple thing to tell about an acoustic. You listen to the depth. Most cheap acoustics have terrible low end. It sounds like, hello, how you doing? Hey. And, it's very mid-rangey, and this has every guitar that I played from them acoustically is great. And so, the maple jumbos and the 12 strings and the mahoganies. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play 2 songs from the new album. I'm going to play the acoustic song. I called it Dreaming of 1986. It reminded me of when I used to hang out in Topanga Canyon and go up in the foothills and sit with an acoustic guitar wow. And then I recorded it on a cassette. But that's, and that's where I got the idea. This song reminded me of that. And then I'm going to play another song called AVTD with audio, visual. It's just catchy. And
did you sing that part? I love that part. Who sang that?
Well, it's a friend of mine named Ross. because that's the oldest riff that I've ever put on a record.
Whoa.
That's from the early 80s.
Wow.
And so I had a song and we had the same thing, do, 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 do. And everybody used to love it. You know, all the girls used to be able to dance to it. Audio. And so I wanted to do a remake, and we had Victor Wooten, you know, play the bass solo and all that. But yeah, it's a guy named Rob Ross. Back in the day, I used to sing it with another singer, but I like the way Rob sang it better. My voice is my guitar skills are still razor sharp. My voice isn't, so I didn't want to go So, but yeah, and we're going to do an assortment of different acoustics, assortment of different electrics. I'm going to play the M24 black and white, the black one here, the white one, an ES series, and then I'm going to play a Heritage series. That's tricked out and you know, got nice Duncan pickups, and so it's going to be a combination of 3 acoustics, the ukulele. I've got a new ukulele, so the last one I did, I actually did "Dancing Days," part of it by Zeppelin.
Oh yeah,
you know, on a uke, and but this one I'm going to do part of "Doolin' Dalton's" by the Eagles, and there's a bluegrass version along with the song. And so, and so I'm going to add that, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, those are so much fun. I want to hit on a couple more points. Looks like we maybe have about 10 minutes left. But you have this shred collaboration coming up with Andy James and Vinnie Moore, two other of my favorite players beside yourself. Can you talk about that? When will that come out, and all about that?
There is a young guitar player, a female, that I met when I was in upstate New York a couple of years ago. She came with her boyfriend, and they were in a band together, and she was a fan of mine. And you know, I didn't think much of it, but you know, we're friends on Instagram, and she's doing pretty well. She did a shred collab with another, or maybe it was a song, I think a Metallica song with another really, you know, a pretty well-known up-and-coming guitarist. So anyway, she started talking to me about a shred collab, and she's, you know, she's young, she's pretty, she's a good guitar player, but she's really ambitious. And I told her, I said, you know, her name is Kate, C-A-I-T, Kate Devin. And I said, Kate, you need to get another named guitarist. I said, I just can't, you know, it's got to make it, you know, let's make this happen. All of a sudden, she tells me Andy James is going to do it. And I know Andy, you know, we're not best friends, but we know each other. And so I go, okay. And I message Andy. I said, Andy, are you on this? And he says, yes, mate. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I figured we needed another person. You know, I talked to Kate about this. It's kind of her idea. She got Andy, she got me. And then I talked to Vinnie Moore. We're really good friends, and Vinnie Moore's amazing. I've known him since the 80s, late 80s. And the very first time I went out of the United States doing shows with Vinnie to Japan. And so we've known each other and been friends ever since. He's amazing. I still got it all together. And so I asked him if he would do it, and he said yes. So we've got, you know, 3 known guitar players, and then a really pretty up-and-coming female guitar player. And it should be out by the end of this month, maybe early July at the latest. You know, we have to have it mixed, and that's Kate's, it's her baby, so to speak. Yeah. You know, it's her, you know, she was the catalyst on all this. So she's got all the parts, and then she's going to have her engineer put it together. So I'm really excited. It's a cool song too. You know, it's really cool. It's kind of, you know, it's kind of majestic. The track, it's not like a typical shred song with, you know, everybody, you know, going 9,000 miles a minute. So, but I think it's going to be really great.
I'm excited for that. That'll be excellent to catch that. So let's wrap it up on a couple topics here. Touring in 2020. We're in a different day and age, you know, where everybody's self-isolating and trying to be as safe as we can. You have this fantastic VIP experience that I have some friends that have attended that, and I have watched some clips on YouTube. You're just the best teacher. I mean, obviously you have your degree in music and composition. You're a great teacher, you know, and I sat there and felt very calmed by the fact, you know, how you would respond to people and watch them play and give them positive feedback. How does that look going forward? What's the rest of your year like in regards to that?
The first part of the year, I at least, I mean, when you consider you were at NAMM, when you consider NAMM, and then I did a 28 city US tour before this COVID thing hit. So I probably played over 40 shows already before the COVID thing hit. We were supposed to be on tour in May. Obviously, it got canceled. I have shows starting the 31st of July in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, that should take me not as big of a tour. Normally, like within a week period, we do 4 to 5 shows, maybe 6. We might have 3. So it looks really good that I'll be on tour from the 31st of July till about the beginning of November in the United States. Nowhere near the amount, maybe a third to 40%, possibly 50% of the amount of shows that I would normally do. And we have this meet and greet experience, and we're keeping it solo, so the numbers are down, so I don't fall in this big category, it's like so we can keep it so it's actually good to tour. We're just working on kind of the logistics of meet and greets. I might be behind a table, obviously no handshaking, maybe the Vulcan live long and prosper, or the bump, or, the fist bump, but don't get that close. And then I'm playing with an Italian guitar player. This is going to be a pretty big tour, starting November 10th to December 18th in Europe. And I have the same agent Vinny Appice uses at Carmine. We all work with in Europe. I mean, this guy's really good and he's known, and I've worked with him. So my year in touring, it's not, Greg, we don't know.
Yes.
I mean, the shows are booked here in the United States. It's maybe going to be at best 50% of the amount of shows that I would normally play in the given amount of time. But we made the decision, whatever shows are booked, let's do it. Get out there and do it. Yeah. And then Europe should be pretty blown up in a good way starting November 10th. We're hoping that because they can't shut down the world forever.
Right, exactly.
I mean, people are just going to have to live with it sooner or later, right. And most of the people survive anyway. So, I think, humans are resilient, and, by November, I think, I'll be on a full-blown European tour. The US ones, we don't, but the VIP thing's very important for this USA tour, especially because it's going to be solo. A lot of times we don't have opening acts, so we can keep the numbers. We did really good on this last tour. We can keep the numbers where it's not going to raise any red flags and, oh my God, right. 1,000-seat venue. We can keep it in the hundreds and, 200 to 500. And so it'll be good, for everybody involved.
Well, Michael, I want to thank you for your time today. As always, where can folks find you? I'm pretty sure people know where to find you, but if you just remind us on this.
Yes. Obviously, you can get me on Facebook, Michael Angelo Batio Official, Instagram, Michael Angelo Batio Official. I'm on Twitter, though I don't use that too much. It's too toxic for me. But and then my website is henswithoutshadows.com. My name from the Chinese gave me that name.
That's so cool.
So I'm pretty easy to find. So, but thanks, Greg. It's great questions.
Thank you so much, Michael, and we'll see you out there in the future. Have a great one.
You too.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.